It was late afternoon when the sun started melting into soft orange light. The small town was calm, almost too calm. Streets were half empty and the air smelled like dust and gasoline from passing cars. A young woman named Lena walked along the side of the road, her hands tucked inside her bag straps, her eyes half tired but peaceful. She had just finished her shift at a small cafe on Main Street, the kind where the same people came every day and ordered the same coffee. She didn't mind the routine. It paid the bills, and for her that was enough. Lena had dreams once, big ones. She wanted to be a photographer, travel the world, capture sunsets from mountaintops. But when her mother fell sick, she had to put everything on hold. Working at the cafe helped her manage medicine costs and rent for their small apartment. Every day was a repeat of the same story. Wake up early, rush to work, serve customers with a smile, then walk home as the sun went down. It wasn't exciting, but it was honest. That evening felt a little different, though. The sky looked strange, a mix of gold and gray clouds. The wind carried a chill, even though it wasn't winter yet. Lena wrapped her scarf around her neck and crossed the empty street. Usually she took the bus, but today she had missed it by a few minutes. So she decided to walk. It wasn't far. Just 20 minutes if she cut through the old market road and took the lane behind the auto shop. As she walked, she noticed 3 motorbikes parked ahead. The engines were still running, their loud noise breaking the calm air. She could see 3 men sitting on them, wearing black leather jackets, helmets half off, smoking and laughing about something. She didn't know them, but the way they looked around made her uneasy. She lowered her eyes and kept walking, hoping to pass without any trouble. One of the men noticed her first. He said something to his friend, who smirked and turned his head in her direction. Lena pretended not to see. Her heart started beating a little faster. She told herself not to worry, that they were probably just hanging out. But a quiet fear grew inside her anyway. The sound of one engine roared louder. She didn't look back, but she could hear one of the bikes slowly rolling behind her. She quickened her steps, clutching her bag tighter. The road that had always felt familiar now felt strangely long. She could hear laughter behind her, short, mocking laughter that made her feel smaller with each step. Her mind raced through different thoughts. Should she run? Should she call someone? But who would answer in time? The nearest store was already closed and the streetlights were still off. When she turned into the narrow lane near the old auto shop, the noise behind her grew louder. One of the bikes zoomed past her, stopping just a few feet ahead, blocking her way. The rider looked over his shoulder and grinned. Another bike stopped behind her. She froze. For a moment, everything went silent except the low rumble of engines. She looked around desperately, but the street was empty. The man in front of her said something she couldn't hear clearly, then took off his helmet. He was tall, his face rough and tired-looking, like someone who'd lived too many wild nights. He tilted his head and said in a teasing tone, "What's the rush? It's a nice evening." Lena didn't answer. She stepped back slightly, trying to create space. But the second biker behind her revved his engine again, making her flinch. "Please," she said softly. "I just want to go home." Her voice was calm but shaking. The man laughed. "Relax, we're just talking. No need to be scared?" His friend chuckled from behind her, whispering something she couldn't catch. The sound of the engines, the smell of fuel, the empty street. It all pressed in on her, making it hard to breathe. She looked at the open space beside the first bike, wondering if she could run past him. But before she moved, the third biker appeared from the corner, cutting off that path too. For a moment, they all just stared at her. It was like time had slowed down. Lena's heart pounded in her chest so hard she could hear it. She didn't know what to do, but she refused to show panic. She took a deep breath, hoping someone might drive by or walk out from one of the houses. But no one came. The man closest to her got off his bike and started walking slowly toward her. She stepped back. "Don't come closer," she said, her voice a little louder this time. He smiled again, the kind of smile that wasn't friendly. "I just want to talk," he said. His boots clicked on the pavement as he took another step forward. She gripped her bag like it was a shield. "Please, just stop," she whispered. Her voice was trembling now. He stopped for a moment, tilting his head as if he was enjoying the fear. "You shouldn't be walking alone," he said. "It's dangerous." His tone was mocking, like he already knew he was the danger. His friend laughed again. Lena looked around desperately, but there was no one. No sound of another car, no door opening nearby. Her chest tightened. She felt trapped. She thought about her mother waiting at home, about the dinner she promised to make, about how she had texted her earlier saying she'd be home soon. A tear slipped down her cheek without her realizing. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. "Please," she managed to say again, "I just want to go home." The man sighed, pretending to be disappointed, and took another step forward. That's when it happened, the sound that broke through everything. A deep, powerful roar of an engine echoed from behind the corner. It wasn't like the bikes around her. This sound was heavier, sharper, like thunder tearing through the still air. Everyone turned their heads. The three bikers looked at each other in confusion. The sound grew louder, closer, and then a large motorcycle came into view at the end of the street. It was moving fast, too fast for the narrow lane. Lena squinted as the headlights cut through the dim light. The rider slowed down as he approached, the tires screeching slightly before stopping just a few meters away. The man on the bike took off his helmet, and for a second no one said a word. Lena's eyes widened in shock. The bikers froze. It was John Cena. He sat on his bike, calm but alert, his eyes fixed on the men around her. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked steady, unshaken. The man who had stepped toward Lena frowned, trying to act confident. "What's this?" he said, forcing a laugh. "You lost, man?" Cena didn't answer. He turned off his engine slowly. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unreal. Lena didn't know what to do. She stood still, her heart racing, unable to believe what was happening. Cena finally spoke, his voice low but strong. "You guys having fun here?" he asked, his tone calm but with an edge that made the air colder. The biker smirked. "None of your business, brother. Keep riding." His words carried fake bravery, but his eyes showed a hint of fear. Cena leaned forward slightly on his bike, his gaze still fixed on him. "It became my business the second I saw what you were doing," he said, steady and firm. The second biker shifted uncomfortably. "Hey man, we were just talking," he said quickly, trying to downplay the moment. Cena's expression didn't change. He looked at Lena, his voice softer now. "You okay?" She nodded slowly, too shocked to say anything. The man in front of her stepped back, pretending to adjust his jacket. The street was dead silent except for the faint hum of Cena's cooling engine. The air was tense, every second stretching longer than it should. Cena stayed calm, not moving. But his presence alone filled the space with something powerful, something the bikers clearly felt. Without another word, the first man glanced at his friends and muttered, "Let's go." They hesitated, but after a moment, they all started their bikes again. The engines roared once more, this time not with confidence but nervous energy. They sped away down the street, their noise fading into the distance. Lena stood frozen. Cena turned toward her again, his face softening. "You're safe now," he said simply. She blinked, still trying to process everything. "Thank you," she whispered. Cena nodded once, then put his helmet back on. "Be careful next time," he said, before starting his engine again. And just like that, he rode off into the fading light. Lena watched until the sound of his bike disappeared completely. She stood there for a while, her knees weak, her heart still racing. The street felt peaceful again, almost as if nothing had happened. But she knew everything had changed. Somewhere deep inside, she knew she had just witnessed something unbelievable. A stranger appearing out of nowhere when she needed help the most. And that night, as she finally walked home under the quiet glow of the streetlights, she whispered to herself, "Sometimes heroes really do exist." Lena couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the headlights, the dark street, and the faces of those bikers. Her heart still raced when she remembered the sound of engines roaring behind her. But then she'd see the moment he appeared, John Cena on his bike, calm and fearless. That memory brought her peace, the kind that felt unreal, like something out of a movie. She sat by the window in her small apartment, staring at the quiet street below. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, each sound echoing in the silence. Her mother was asleep in the next room, breathing softly. Lena didn't want to wake her. She had told her mother nothing about what happened. She didn't want to worry her or see that look of fear in her eyes. The night breeze moved the curtain slightly. Lena hugged her knees and thought about how close she had come to something terrible. The world suddenly felt so unpredictable, so unsafe. Yet, in the middle of all that fear, a complete stranger had stepped in and protected her. Not because he had to, but because he cared enough to act. That thought stayed with her. The next morning, she got up early, made tea for her mother, and tried to act normal. but her mind was still somewhere else. She kept hearing his voice, calm, steady. "You're safe now." She wished she could have thanked him properly. Everything happened so fast that she never got the chance. When she reached the cafe for work, the usual customers were already there. The old man who read newspapers at the same table every morning gave her a small nod. The manager waved and smiled. But Lena was distracted. Her coworker noticed and asked, "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." She forced a smile and said, "Just tired." Throughout the day, her hands shook a little while serving customers. She spilled a bit of coffee once and laughed it off, but deep down her thoughts were miles away. She kept replaying last night in her mind, the way the bikers surrounded her, and then the sound of Cena's bike cutting through the silence. During her break, she sat outside on the back steps sipping her tea slowly. The sun was bright, people passed by, kids ran down the street laughing. Everything looked normal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in her. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was gratitude. Or maybe both. She thought about the bikers, too. Were they still out there? Would they come back? The idea sent a chill down her spine. But then she remembered Cena's face, calm and firm, and she took a deep breath. She reminded herself she wasn't alone. There were still good people in this world. Later that evening, as she was closing up the cafe, she heard the faint rumble of a motorcycle outside. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned to look through the window and froze. It was him. The same dark bike, the same steady posture. John Cena. He parked near the sidewalk and took off his helmet, glancing toward the cafe. Their eyes met for a second, and she felt a mix of shock and relief. She quickly walked out, her hand still holding her apron. "Hey," she called softly. Cena gave a small smile. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said. His tone was calm, kind. "No, it's okay," she said, still catching her breath. I didn't think I'd see you again." He leaned against his bike. "I was riding through the area and thought I'd check if you were all right." That simple line meant more than he probably realized. She nodded quickly. "I'm fine. I mean, I didn't sleep much, but I'm fine." "Thank you. For everything." Cena shrugged slightly. "You don't have to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." Lena shook her head. "No, they wouldn't have. People were around before it happened. I saw cars passing earlier. No one stopped." He looked down for a moment, thoughtful. "Sometimes people are afraid to get involved," he said. "But fear's not an excuse when someone's in danger." She smiled faintly, touched by how simply he said it. There was no show-off attitude, no celebrity pride. Just a genuine man who believed in doing what was right. They stood there in silence for a while. The sun was dipping low again, painting the sky orange. Cars passed by slowly. The world felt softer, calmer. Finally, she said, "I still can't believe you were there at that exact moment." Cena smiled. "I wasn't planning to be. I had just finished a workout at the gym outside town. My GPS sent me through that shortcut. Lucky timing, I guess." "Lucky for me," she said quietly. He nodded. Maybe it was meant to be. Lena hesitated before asking, "What if you hadn't shown up?" He looked at her, serious now. "Don't think about that," he said gently. "You're safe. That's what matters." She nodded again, trying not to let her emotions show, but her eyes were watery. "I still don't know how to thank you," she whispered. Cena smiled. "Just take care of yourself. That's thanks enough." He started his bike again, but before he left, he said, "And if you ever have to walk home that late again, call someone or get a ride." "Don't take chances, I won't," she promised. He gave a small nod and put his helmet on. "Good, stay safe, Lena." Then, with a rev of his engine, he rode off, leaving her standing there in the fading light. She watched him disappear again, like a scene repeating itself, him riding away, quiet and steady, as if he'd come just to make sure she was okay and nothing more. But this time, instead of fear, she felt warmth, a sense of safety she hadn't felt in a long time. That night, Lena told her mother everything. She described the whole event, every detail, the fear, the noise, and then how John Cena appeared like a guardian angel. Her mother covered her mouth in shock, then reached for her hand. "My God," she whispered. "You're lucky. You could have been hurt." Lena nodded. "I know, but he was there. He didn't even hesitate." Her mother smiled weakly. "There are still good people in this world. Remember that." Those words echoed in her head long after her mother went to bed. She sat by the window again, this time looking up at the stars. She realized that even though the night had scared her, it also taught her something powerful, that kindness can appear in the most unexpected ways. The next few days passed quietly. People at the cafe began talking about what happened. Someone had recorded part of the moment from their balcony, just the sound of the bikes and the quick glimpse of Cena standing between Lena and the gang. The clip spread online fast. Customers whispered about it, calling it the miracle at Elm Street. Lena didn't like the attention, but she couldn't stop people from talking. When a local news reporter came by asking if she wanted to share her story, she politely declined. She didn't want fame. She didn't want to be the girl from the viral clip. She just wanted life to feel normal again. But part of her knew things had changed forever. Each time she walked home now, people smiled at her. Some even asked if she was the girl John Cena helped. It felt strange but comforting at the same time. A week later, while closing the cafe one night, she saw a black car parked near the curb. The window rolled down and a familiar voice called, "Need a ride home?" She turned and saw him again, Cena sitting behind the wheel with that calm smile. "You again?" she said, laughing softly. He shrugged. "Just making sure you're keeping your promise." She hesitated, then smiled and nodded. "I guess I can accept a ride this time." As they drove, they talked like old friends. About life, family, simple things. Cena listened more than he spoke. He told her he liked quiet towns like this, reminded him that there's still honesty in small places. Lena told him how she once dreamed of becoming a photographer but had to give up on it. He looked at her for a moment, then said, "Maybe it's not too late," she laughed. "Maybe not." When they reached her street, he stopped the car and said, "You're stronger than you think, you know." She looked at him, unsure what to say. He smiled. "Don't let one bad night define how you see the world. There's still light out there." Those words stuck with her long after he drove away. As she entered her home, she looked at her old camera lying on the shelf. It had been collecting dust for years. That night she picked it up again, wiped it clean, and took a picture of the stars through her window. The photo came out a little blurry, but it made her smile, because for the first time in a long while, she felt like life was beautiful again, and somewhere out there, she knew the man who appeared out of nowhere that night was still riding those same roads, helping others, reminding people that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they just show up when the world needs them the most. The days turned into weeks, and slowly life started to feel normal again for Lena. The cafe buzzed with regulars. The streets looked brighter, and she had even started smiling more. But deep down, something had changed in her. That one night had left a mark, and not of fear, but of awareness. She looked at people differently now. She noticed how many walked with their heads down, too busy or too scared to look around. She understood how easy it was for someone to be in trouble, and for everyone else to look away. Every evening when the cafe closed, she made sure someone from work walked her to the main road. The other workers didn't mind. They had all heard about what happened, but sometimes when she saw a motorcycle passing by, her heart would still skip. Not from fear anymore, but from a quiet hope that it might be him again. John Cena hadn't visited since that night he gave her a ride home. She told herself he was busy, probably moved on to another city or back to work. Still, she couldn't forget his words. Don't let one bad night define how you see the world. One morning, she woke up early and went out with her old camera. The air was cool, the streets quiet. She hadn't taken photos in years, but something inside her wanted to start again. She took pictures of the sunrise, of the street vendor setting up his stall, of a small cat stretching in the sunlight. It felt peaceful. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't just surviving, she was living. That afternoon, while wiping tables at work, she noticed two men in uniforms sitting near the window. Police officers. They were discussing something quietly. One of them had a picture on his phone that looked like a group of bikers. Lena froze when she saw it. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but a familiar feeling crept into her chest. She waited until they finished and walked toward the counter. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are those the bikers who've been in the news lately?" The officer nodded. "Yeah, they've been causing trouble again. Same gang that's been harassing people at night near the industrial area." Her throat went dry. "So, they haven't been caught yet?" "Not yet," the officer said. "But we're close." Lena nodded slowly. Her hands were trembling, but she hid it. The officer smiled kindly. "Don't worry, miss. We'll take care of it." Then they left, leaving her staring out the window in silence. That night, as she was locking up the cafe, she felt a familiar unease. The streetlights flickered and the sound of distant engines echoed again. It wasn't close, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. She grabbed her phone and started walking quickly toward the bus stop. The road was empty except for the faint sound of a motorcycle approaching from far away. For a moment, she panicked, but then she noticed something. The sound was steady, calm, not wild or threatening. The headlight came closer and her heart lifted slightly. The bike slowed down beside her. It was him. John Cena stopped the bike and looked at her. "You're walking again?" he said with a small grin. Lena couldn't help but laugh, the fear instantly fading. "I missed the bus," she said. He smiled. "You have bad luck with buses." "I know," she said, shaking her head. He took off his helmet and looked around. "You're not scared anymore, are you?" "Not like before," she said honestly. "But I still remember that night every time I walk this road." He nodded. "That's normal. Fear doesn't go away in a day. It just teaches you how to stay alert." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like something you'd say." He chuckled softly. "Maybe because I've had my share of bad nights too." They started walking together. The air was cool and the town was quiet. The streetlights glowed on the wet pavement from an earlier drizzle. Lena glanced at him a few times, curious. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," he said. "Why did you stop that night?" "You didn't even know me." He was quiet for a moment before answering. "I don't like seeing people get hurt. I've seen too much of that in my life. When I saw you surrounded like that, I didn't think, I just acted." Lena listened carefully. His voice was steady but carried a weight, like he'd lived through things he didn't talk about. He continued, "The world's full of people who think someone else will step in. But that someone has to be us sometimes." She nodded, thinking about all the people who had passed that night without stopping. When they reached the main road, Cena looked at her and said, "Next time, call the police right away. Don't wait, and don't walk alone if you can help it." She smiled. "You sound like my mother now." He laughed. "That means she's smart." They stood there for a moment, both smiling under the yellow light of the street lamp. Then she said softly, "I'm glad you came back." He looked at her and said, "Maybe I was supposed to." Then he started his bike again, but before leaving he added, "Take care, Lena." When he drove away, she stood there for a long time, watching the light fade down the road. The next day, Lena couldn't focus at work again. Her mind kept going back to that brief walk. There was something about the way he spoke, calm, honest, protective. It wasn't about fame or strength. It was about heart. Later that evening, she saw a news alert on her phone. It said that the same biker gang had been spotted again near a warehouse outside town. Police were on the move. Her stomach turned when she saw the photo. It was them, the same faces she'd seen that night. She didn't know why, but worry flooded her. What if someone got hurt this time? What if they hurt someone else who wasn't as lucky? She paced around her small living room, trying to calm down. But then her phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number. It read, "Stay inside tonight. Don't go near the old warehouse area." Her heart stopped. There was no name, but she knew who it was. Cena. She stared at the message for a long moment, torn between fear and curiosity. How did he know what was happening? Was he there? Was he trying to stop them again? Minutes later, distant sirens echoed through the town. Blue and red lights flashed faintly against the windows. She stepped outside, watching as police cars rushed past the end of her street. The night air was filled with tension. She didn't sleep much after that. Every sound outside made her jump. But deep down, she trusted that he was out there, somewhere, making sure things didn't get worse. The next morning, the news confirmed that the gang had been caught after a short chase. No one was hurt. The officers credited an anonymous citizen for helping track them down. They didn't say who it was, but Lena already knew. At work, everyone was talking about it. Some said it was luck. Others said the police had been watching them for weeks. But Lena stayed quiet, smiling to herself. She knew the truth. Someone had helped from the shadows. Someone who didn't care about getting credit. That evening, as she left work, she found something taped to the door of the cafe. A small note. No name, just 4 simple words written in neat handwriting. "Keep smiling. You're safe." She looked around, half expecting to see him, but there was no one. The street was calm again, the same as always. but her heart felt lighter. When she got home that night, she placed the note inside her camera case. It wasn't just a message, and it was a reminder. A reminder that kindness still existed, that courage didn't always need applause, and that sometimes strangers cross our paths for a reason we can't explain. As she sat by the window, the moonlight spilling into the room, she whispered to herself, "Some people appear once and change everything." And somewhere far down the road under the same night sky, a single motorcycle roared softly into the distance, steady, calm, and unshakable, carrying the man who had appeared out of nowhere when the world had turned dark. A few weeks had passed since the gang was caught, and life in the small town had settled down again. The nights were quieter now. People felt safer walking home, and the police patrolled more often. Lena's days slowly found their rhythm again. She worked her shifts, helped her mother with chores, and spent her mornings taking pictures of small, beautiful things she had once ignored. A flower pushing through a crack in the sidewalk. Children chasing a ball near the park. The world suddenly seemed full of stories she had never noticed before. But even with peace returning to the town, she still thought about him, the man who had appeared out of nowhere and changed everything. John Cena had disappeared again after that last note, and though she told herself she shouldn't expect to see him, a small part of her still hoped she would. Every time she heard a motorcycle in the distance, her heart paused for a second. But it was always someone else. One evening, while cleaning tables near closing time, she overheard two customers talking. "Did you hear?" one said. "That Hollywood guy was spotted at the community center yesterday. The big wrestler, what's his name?" The other laughed. "John Cena? You're kidding." Lena's hand froze. She turned slightly, pretending to wipe the table. "Yeah," the first one continued. "He was helping with some charity work. Didn't even tell anyone he was coming. Just showed up." Her heart raced. Could it be true? Without thinking much, she decided to go the next day. The next morning, she finished her shift early and took a bus to the community center. The building wasn't fancy, just an old brick hall surrounded by trees and benches. There were people gathered outside laughing and unloading boxes of food and supplies. She looked around carefully, not sure what she would say if she actually saw him. Then she heard a familiar voice from behind the boxes. "Careful with those. We don't want them falling." It was him. Her breath caught. There he was, dressed in simple clothes, helping lift crates like everyone else. No cameras, no fans, no show, just another man lending a hand. For a moment, she just watched. It felt strange seeing someone so famous blending in so easily. He looked at Peace, smiling at the volunteers, joking with kids. When he turned and spotted her, his expression shifted from surprise to warmth. "Lena," he said, walking over. "You found this place." She laughed softly. "I heard a rumor. Thought I should see if it was true." He smiled. "Guess it was." They stood there for a moment, the noise of the volunteers filling the air. She asked, "You do this often?" "As often as I can," he said. "It keeps me grounded. Reminds me that fame doesn't mean much if you can't use it for good." Lena nodded. "I think that's what makes you different." He looked at her, half smiling. "I'm not different. Just trying to be useful." She helped him carry some boxes inside, and as they worked, they talked like old friends. He asked about her mother, her photography, her job. She told him she'd picked up her camera again. He seemed genuinely happy to hear that. "That's good," he said. "The world needs more people who can see beauty in simple things." They spent the afternoon sorting supplies and handing out meals. Cena treated everyone with the same respect, whether it was a child asking for a picture or an old man thanking him quietly. There was no spotlight, no ego, just kindness. Later, when most of the work was done, they sat on a bench outside the hall. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long golden shadows. Lena looked at him and said softly, "Do you ever get tired of being the person everyone expects you to be?" He thought for a moment before answering, "Sometimes, but I remind myself that I'm still human. I make mistakes. I get tired. But I also remember why I started doing what I do, to make people believe in something good again." Lena listened quietly. "That's what you did for me," she said. "That night I lost all faith in people. I thought no one cared anymore. But you proved me wrong," he smiled gently. "I didn't do anything special. I just showed up." She shook her head. "You showed up when no one else did. That's not nothing." There was a long silence after that, the kind that doesn't need words, just the sound of the wind moving through the trees and children laughing in the distance. Then Cena said quietly, "You know, sometimes we meet people for reasons we don't understand right away. Maybe we're meant to help them, or maybe they're meant to remind us of something we've forgotten." She looked at him, unsure what to say. "So which one am I?" she asked with a small smile. He chuckled softly. "Maybe both." They both laughed lightly, and for a while everything felt simple again. As evening turned to night, the volunteers started packing up. Cena stood and said, "I should get going. Long drive ahead." Lena felt a small ache in her chest. "Will you come back?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, his eyes calm but kind. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'll always remember this place. And the people who made me believe that small towns still have big hearts," she smiled. "That sounds like something I'd take a picture of." "Then do it," he said, smiling. "Keep taking pictures. Don't stop." Before leaving, he handed her something small, a folded piece of paper. "Open it later," he said, then got on his bike. The engine started with that familiar deep sound, and she stood there, watching him ride off once more. When she finally unfolded the note, it had only one line written in bold handwriting: "Never doubt the power of kindness." That night, Lena sat by her window again. The note in her hand, her camera beside her. She thought about everything: the fear, the courage, the unexpected friendship. Life had strange ways of teaching lessons, she realized. Sometimes it tested you, sometimes it saved you, and sometimes it sent someone into your life just long enough to change how you saw the world. The next few days were calm, but full of meaning. Inspired by Cena's words, Lena started a small project at the cafe. She began taking pictures of people around town: workers, families, children, strangers, capturing moments of kindness and hope. She called the project "Good Hearts of Our Town." She printed the photos and pinned them on a board inside the cafe. Customers loved it. Some smiled when they saw themselves. Others teared up seeing neighbors helping one another. Soon, word spread, and more people started coming in just to see the wall of photos. It became a symbol of goodness, proof that even small gestures mattered. Lena didn't take credit for the idea. She just said it was inspired by someone who believed in doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. One afternoon, as she was rearranging the photos, a man entered quietly and stood behind her. She turned around. It was one of the police officers who had visited the cafe weeks ago. He smiled and said, "You're the girl from that night, aren't you?" Lena hesitated, then nodded slowly. He looked at the photos on the wall and said, "You've turned something dark into something beautiful." "That's rare," she smiled softly. "I had help." He nodded knowingly. "Yeah, that guy, Cena. He's something else." Lena looked at the pictures again, her heart full. "Yeah," she whispered. "He really is." As the officer left, she stood there for a long time, staring at the photo wall. Every picture told a story: a mother hugging her child, a shopkeeper giving free bread to a hungry man, a bus driver helping an old woman cross the street. It reminded her of how far she had come, from fear to courage, from silence to inspiration. That night, as she locked the cafe and walked home, the moon was bright and the streets calm. She didn't feel scared anymore. She felt strong. The world wasn't perfect, but it was full of people who could make it better. One act of kindness at a time. And somewhere far away, maybe on another quiet road, John Cena rode through the night again, helping someone else, changing another life without expecting anything in return. Months passed, and the little cafe on the corner had become something special in town. People called it the Wall of Kindness Cafe. What started as a small idea had turned into something far bigger than Lena ever imagined. The photo wall was now filled from top to bottom, every inch covered with pictures of kindness. New faces appeared every week: a postman helping a stray dog, a student tutoring another for free, a man planting flowers in the park. It was no longer just a wall. It was a mirror showing the best side of the town. Visitors came from nearby cities to see it. Some came for coffee. Some came just to stare quietly at the pictures. Lena never made a big deal out of it. She'd smile and tell everyone the same thing: these are real heroes. Every one of them. Her life had changed too. She was no longer afraid to walk the streets alone. Not because the danger disappeared, but because she had found courage inside herself. The memory of that night still came back sometimes, but not as fear. It came as strength. It reminded her that one person's courage could light up a whole town. One morning, a local journalist came to the cafe. He was doing a story about people who had made a positive change in the community. He asked if he could interview her. She hesitated at first, not wanting attention, but he said softly, "Sometimes people need to hear about hope. It gives them courage to do good too." So she agreed. They sat at a small table near the window as the morning sun poured in. The reporter asked her how it all began. She smiled faintly and said, "It started on a quiet evening when I was just trying to walk home." She told him about the night she was followed, the fear she felt, and how a stranger appeared out of nowhere to protect her. She didn't give too many details about the confrontation. She didn't want to focus on the darkness. Instead, she spoke about what came after. "He could have just walked away," she said softly. "But he didn't, he stayed. He made sure I was safe. And that small act reminded me that goodness is still alive. I wanted to pass that feeling to others." The reporter listened quietly, deeply moved. "You never told anyone who he was?" he asked. Lena shook her head. "I didn't want the story to become about him being famous. I wanted people to remember what he did, not who he was." The reporter smiled. "That's rare." The article was published a week later, titled "The Girl Who Turned Fear into Hope." It didn't mention John Cena's name, but readers could feel there was something powerful behind her story. The cafe got busier and letters started arriving, some from people in nearby towns, others from different parts of the country. They wrote how her story reminded them to help strangers, to trust again, to look for the good in people. One evening, after closing time, Lena sat by the window reading a letter that had just come in. It was from a young man who wrote, "I was about to give up on everything, but after reading your story I decided to try again. You don't know me, but your kindness saved me." She folded the letter gently and looked outside at the quiet street. The same street that had once been filled with fear now felt peaceful. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Thank you," as if someone far away could hear her. A week later, she was invited to a community event at the town hall. It was a celebration of people who had made a difference. Teachers, volunteers, shopkeepers, and ordinary citizens who had done something kind for others. The mayor himself attended and thanked everyone for bringing light into their town. When it was Lena's turn to speak, she stood nervously on the stage, holding a small note in her hand. The hall was full, but everyone was quiet, waiting for her words. She took a deep breath. "I'm not used to speaking in front of people," she began, "but I just want to say something simple. There was a time when I lost all faith in people. I thought the world was only full of danger and hate. But one night someone proved me wrong. He showed me that kindness isn't a weakness. It's the strongest thing we have. Because kindness can stop fear, it can heal wounds, and it can change hearts." Her voice trembled slightly as she continued. "I started the photo wall not because I wanted attention, but because I wanted to remind everyone that heroes are everywhere. You don't need to be famous or strong or rich. You just need to care." The crowd clapped softly, then louder. Some even stood up. Lena felt tears in her eyes but smiled through them. After the event, as people left, a man approached her quietly. He was wearing a cap and casual jacket, keeping his head low. When he got closer, she froze for a moment. She recognized that smile. "John," she whispered. He grinned. "You gave quite a speech." She laughed softly, still surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Passing through," he said. "Heard there was an event about good people. Thought I might find one here." Lena shook her head with a smile. "You never stop, do you?" He shrugged. "I just follow the noise of good hearts." They walked outside together, away from the crowd. The night air was cool and the town lights glowed softly in the distance. "You've done something incredible," he said, looking at her. "You turned one bad night into something that changed hundreds of lives." She smiled. "I just followed your advice." "What advice?" "Never doubt the power of kindness." He nodded slowly, smiling. "Looks like you understood it better than I ever did." They both laughed quietly. Then Lena asked, "Do you ever wonder how many lives you've changed?" He thought for a moment. "That's not what matters," he said. "What matters is whether they pass it on." And you did. They walked for a while, talking about small things, in the cafe, the photo wall, the people who came to see it. It felt like talking to an old friend, someone who had always been there even when far away.